AI Luis has been thrown into the trash and has been burned, not to be seen again for a while.
He's been put out of his misery.
Yeah,
he was
seriously.
too sweet for this world.
He was too vulnerable for this dark, dark world. Man, AI Luis could not handle being born in Mexico. I, at least, have been coping with it for the last, 25 years.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Unbelievable. I am digital pirate Kurt Danner, joined here by the only human unable to pass the Turing test, Luis Mejia.
That's me.
And this, as you know, is the podcast where normally we would have two stories, one of them true, one of them false. But today we are actually changing it up. We are going to have three stories, two will be true and one will be false.
And it's up to me to figure out which is which.
Something like that.
Exactly. I was going to say, Kurt, I mean, you can just call it two truths and a lie. That is a game that exists.
That's true. We're finally being true to our nature, because it used to be our elevator pitch was that we're weird history with two truths and a lie, except because of time constraints, it's one truth, one lie. Got a little wordy.
Yeah, now a year further, we stopped caring. So we're freestyling now, Kurt. This is
exactly.
It's a free path ahead of us, and it's just you, it's me, the nature, and the road. You know?
Yes, and the road. Yes, we are off the rails. And also, in addition to our little change up, we have a theme for today's stories. The theme is cyberspace. Ooh.
Bop, bop, boop, bop.
So, as you can guess, we're going to the cutting edge of technology, right up against this very second. We're right in the front of history. So before we say goodbye to all the ancient history we know and love, Luis, I asked you to bring me a very, very old fast fact. Do you have said fast fact?
Oh, Kurt.
Maybe true, maybe false.
I think I have a fast fact where it's almost impossible to go further back in history and in time.
Okay.
Especially when it relates to humanity and humanity's time on this earth. So, true or false, Kurt? In prehistory, what do I mean by prehistory? Hunter-gatherer, way before we have any sort of written records.
Okay.
If you had a disability, you would be left to die. True or false?
I am going to say false, because even though I could see that happening in some cases, I'm guessing that in general, the human drive to reproduce and recreate would keep you from wanting to throw away your children. Even if you did have a child that was disabled, I feel like you wouldn't leave them to die.
Yeah, well, you know what, Kurt? It's actually true, and I'm going to go into a little bit of detail on here.
Okay.
So we tend to think of prehistoric tribes and prehistoric humans as incredibly primitive, primal creatures, where there's not a terribly set distinction between man and beast, to put it in a sort of way. We kind of tend to think of primitive humans and prehistory humans as essentially just working off of primitive emotions and things of the sort. However, there has been evidence to prehistorical hunter-gathering societies of old humans to take care of their youth, because at the end of the day, we must remember,
Oh, that's nice.
or of their youth and of their members of their community that have had some sort of disability. So we have to
Right.
remember that at the end of the day, these people are humans much like you and me right now. And I'll give you a couple of examples, because we're going to go even way past humans and back into the Neanderthals, which, as we know, was one of our common ancestors, where eventually we come from the Neanderthals, another species of human that died out. There's remains of community in a place called Shanidar in Iraq that is dated from 65,000 to 35,000 BCE. And in this place, Shanidar, which is a cave in Iraq, they found these remains of this person that they call Nandi. Great name. Archaeologists have so much fun.
Nice.
Nandi, they found this remains, and they can tell that this person had some sort of trauma in their head that was caused early in their life. Archaeologists think that this Nandi was struck at a very young age, which meant that they were blind in one eye and partially blind, if not fully blind, in the other one also. So very bad vision. Not only that, because of this strike, because of this incident, Nandi also had partial hearing loss or total hearing loss. as well
Wow.
as a withered arm. So their left arm was withered from the elbow down, aka fully didn't work, and there's signs that it was
Wow.
amputated later in life. And if this wasn't enough for old Nandy, there's also evidence of Nandy having a terrible leg injury or leg disability to the point where this person would have had a really bad limp and painful limp throughout their entire life. So this deaf, blind, and disabled person back in the day, you'd think that they'd be left out for the wolves, especially because they're from Neanderthal society. However, all these injuries are from way before their death.
Wow.
Meaning that this person was certainly a burden to the community that they lived with. They couldn't go out. They could barely feed themselves. They could barely communicate. And yet they were kept to live up to around 40 years old, which for Neanderthals is a pretty
old.
significant number. It would be kind of equivalent to 80 years old today. And real quick, Kurt, before I give back the baton to you, I have one more example, and this is from way before Nandy, even from 500,000 years ago. That's 500,000 years ago.
Wow.
In a cave in Spain, they found the remains of a group of Homo erectus specimens. Again, another human subspecies, if we want to call it that way. They found the remains of what can be considered a 5-year-old. AKA, they dated this. This is a 5-year-old skull, right? Now, this skull was very specific because it had a very strong, intense deformity in the brain, meaning that it would have been almost completely paralyzed and just really unable to develop in a quote-unquote normal way for Homo erectus society. And yet it still lived to 5 years old. And interestingly, one of the things that they note from this skull in Spain is that this 5-year-old had cavities in their teeth, meaning that they were fed, probably mostly
They got some
sweet
sugar,
things.
some candy.
They probably were fed a lot of sweet things because this person could not feed themselves. So we do have examples of people caring about their disabled, about the people that are less abled than those. And like I stated in the beginning, that goes against our common way of thinking that people in prehistory, Neanderthals, Homo erectus, early humans were more savage or quote unquote less civilized than we are today. At the end of the day, they had the same abilities of compassion, the same abilities of empathy, the same abilities of love that we have to this day, Kurt.
Yeah. I think that we had never considered that in every caveman society, there's like a bed full of old people like a la Charlie and the Chocolate Factory style. You know,
they just had the grandparents just sitting next to each other in the bed.
Or, a couple people walking around with their seeing eye dire wolf or what have you, you know.
So whenever we lived together, Kurt, and people just called us a bunch of stupid Neanderthals, now we have a way to refute them and say, nay, we are just humans. Just like the Neanderthals.
Yeah,
that'll
then. Make us cool, whipping out our Neanderthal knowledge.
Listen, Kurt, we gotta do whatever we can. Or at least I do. So
that's true. And speaking of whipping out knowledge, I got quite a bit to whip out for you today, Luis.
Oh, I'm excited, Kurt.
Let's move on to our first story. And this is a story of a world pandemic, which is something that we're very familiar with at this point. But this is actually an older world pandemic that likely most of us were infected by and still to this day don't know it.
Oh my God.
So to tell you how this all came about, first I got to go back to 2006. And in 2006, tensions between... No, not so much, Luis. I mean, you say that, but things were pretty bad on the global stage between Iran and the U.S. because we're in a post 9/11 world, and Iran is seen by a lot of countries as a bad actor at this point. Iran has made some threats towards Israel, and the main line of the U.S. government in Israel is that they think if Iran gets nuclear weapons, they'll immediately use them on Israel. There's still talks of disarmament, but if you know about U.S. history, you know that that won't get settled until the next presidency, the Obama administration. So at
some
this
could
point,
say to this day, Kurt.
Some could say to this day. Well, that's when they were settled the first time. I guess now we'll see if they get settled the second time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that you had to finish disarming a country twice, but here we are.
You know.
But anyway, it was even worse in 2006 because there was no end in sight and no compromise that seemed like it was going to work out. So the US and Israel, not really wanting to wait around and see what happens, jointly launch a secret cyber warfare campaign codenamed Operation Olympic Games.
Very good. Good code name.
Good name. And the kind of mission statement of Operation Olympic Games is that they're going to value offense over defense. So rather than putting resources into some way to defend themselves, they'd rather put resources into finding a way to strike first. And their main goal is to dismantle the Iranian nuclear infrastructure.
Easy enough.
Easy enough, yeah. Done in a weekend. They began launching a series of small cyber attacks on Iranian nuclear infrastructure, but their biggest target is this facility called the Natanz Nuclear Enrichment Facility. They really want this one because this is Iran's primary nuclear enrichment facility. So this is where they're getting most of their nuclear fuel from. So the facility is 6 buildings that are above ground and then 3 buildings that are underground. And in the underground buildings, there's somewhere around 120,000 centrifuges. Centrifuges are these big cylinders that will spin really fast to separate out materials. So in this case, they're using them to enrich nuclear fuel, mostly uranium, I think. In the underground facilities, the centrifuges and the computers that control them are air-gapped. This means that they're not connected to any external network or a power source. So basically, like, there's no cable running from one of the computers or the centrifuges out to the outside world. Everything is inside its own little box. So there's no way to hack into this system or get into it electronically because it's not connected to anything on the outside.
Ah, yes, like a VPN. No.
A little bit better than that, Luis. But this is kind of like a really unique problem. I mean, it's a really secure facility. Obviously, they don't want anyone to get in here. You have any ideas how you would go about getting into this? Let's say you're the czar of Operation Olympic Games. Yeah. What's your plan here?
Well, the first thing that would come to mind if you ask me, Luis Mejia, at this very point, is a fun heist situation.
Little Ocean's 11 action.
Yeah, exactly. But how I do understand that heists are not as fun in real life as they are in the movies. So I'm going to discard that. But at the end of the day, I think it goes to the same idea of, I mean, you want to get some sort of entry into this facility just to be able to relay that information outside, I would say.
Yeah. So what they start working on is the perfect virus. And they name it Stuxnet.
Ooh.
And just a little note to be pedantic here. Technically, it was a worm, not a virus, because a worm can self-replicate, a virus cannot. But calling it a virus is way cooler, and I did already put this up as a big pandemic, so I kind of have to use virus now. I'm going to say virus, but just so you know, technically, it's a worm.
Yeah. That's all right.
Okay, it's unknown when this project actually started. This is not information the government has released, but this was probably started at the beginning of Operation Olympic Games, which was around 2005. Here's what is known. Initially, it was kind of seen as a sci-fi concept, something that was more of a hope than a reality. But as the project went along, it became a more and more plausible idea, and so testing and development ramped up.
That's also how I describe this podcast, Kurt. At first, no one was ready nor trusting, and yet it kept going.
Against all odds.
Against all odds, this worm kept moving.
This worm or virus.
Some could say both. Sorry to interrupt, Kurt.
That's okay. As it goes along, they get more and more obsessed with a higher level of precision with their testing. And so finally, they build a model of the Natanz facility to test the virus. So it's the same layout as the facility. It's also air-gapped. And in order to really stay true to this, they want to get centrifuges that are like identical to the ones in the facility. So in 2003, Gaddafi, the former dictator of Libya, had turned over a bunch of his nuclear centrifuges to the US.
Damn it.
And apparently they'd just been sitting in a warehouse in Tennessee. So
what?
They went and got these centrifuges to use them in this scale model of the Natanz facility to test the virus.
All right. Scale model and all of this, going through all this trouble. Kurt, this is sounding more and more like a heist. I'm getting excited.
Oh, yeah. We're into some real spy stuff here, Luis. Get excited.
Yes.
So they're testing. Things are going better and better. And finally, during a dramatic meeting in the White House Situation Room towards the end of the Bush presidency, Gaddafi's now destroyed centrifuges were laid out across the table as proof that the virus could work, and the project was greenlit to be used in the field. Before I go any further, you might be wondering, Luis, how does the perfect virus work? It has to have 3 components, okay? It needs to be extremely contagious. It needs to destroy the centrifuges beyond repair, right? Because that's kind of the main goal here. And it needs to stay undetected because this is a covert operation.
Right, a heist.
So So this is the process of Stuxnet, okay? Stuxnet exploited 5 different zero-day bugs in both Windows, so the computer system, and Siemens PLC, which is the software that lets the computers operate the centrifuges. A day zero bug is a bug that's in the system when it launches. So it's basically like a hole that has never been found and patched in the system. Normally, if you were going to hack into something, you would use one day zero bug because you only need one hole to get in, but they kind of want like something that won't fail. So they're using a total of 5 different zero-day bugs. And as soon as Stuxnet gets into a system, it immediately transmits itself out to every device on the same network as the first infected. So this is, obviously extremely contagious and can access a computer pretty easily if it's a Windows computer.
What they didn't know, everyone was using an Apple computer.
All of Iran was on Mac. They could never have predicted it. The one piece of intel.
All Iranian politicians on the year of our Lord 2006 had received a iMac as their bonus for that year. They wouldn't know that would be their saving grace.
Now, that would be a weird history story.
That would be.
Man, maybe I should have told you that.
Damn.
Who knows? Stop the podcast. We got to re-record. Start from the beginning.
Stop the podcast. They've all got Windows computers. Shucks.
Okay, but so the second thing that Stuxnet needs to do is completely destroy the centrifuges. And one interesting tidbit is that I mentioned the Siemens PLC, the software that operates the centrifuges. Mm-hmm. So also when Stuxnet gets onto a system, it looks for that. If it doesn't find Siemens PLC, then it lies dormant and never activates. So basically, if it infects a computer that's not a computer running an Iranian nuclear centrifuge, then it never does anything. And you will never detect that it's there.
Oh no, this sucks for me because I have my computer set to run a centrifuge.
Yeah, anyone listening at home, check your Iranian nuclear centrifuge computers this moment. Don't wait till the podcast is over.
If your Windows computer is running Iranian radioactive centrifuges, run.
Yeah, so after it lays dormant for a couple weeks in the system, learning the way the system works and the instructions and the schedule and the normal readings, it will cause an attack where it sends faulty instructions to the centrifuges, basically making them spin at speeds or angles that cause them to break apart and destroy themselves, while also simultaneously transmitting all clear signals to any control panels or computer screens, and also will send like average readings of whatever the statistics should be at the time, so no one even knows that the centrifuge is breaking unless they're actually in the room seeing it like throw itself apart.
Yeah, nice. Good.
And also, when it lays dormant in the system to learn it, it does this so that it can do a different attack every time. So it will wait different lengths of time before attacking or destroy the centrifuges using different methods or send different faulty readings. So needless to say, this keeps the Iranians pretty confused. So they began testing this in the field, first in smaller nuclear enrichment facilities, and to pretty astonishing results. I think it's pretty much complete success. The only weak point of this whole operation is that initially the virus has to get into the facility on a flash drive.
Yeah.
So someone has to literally physically carry it in. And this would normally be done with a combination of spies and unknowing janitors or lab techs carrying it in.
Nice.
So they make a couple updates to the virus. Allegedly, they improve on this flash drive system, but I couldn't find any research on what that was. They didn't release that info, but allegedly they've come up with something better. They actually make it even more infectious because they're not satisfied with how infectious it is. And then a couple other minor tweaks. I don't know at what point they started carrying out attacks on the Natanz facility, but by 2010, they were in full swing carrying out attacks little by little on the facility, and with seemingly good success. So in an average year, the Natanz facility would probably have to replace about 800 of their centrifuges because they're just a piece of equipment that will wear out. But in 2010, they replaced around 2,000 of them, so more than double a normal year. All in all, it's estimated that Stuxnet destroyed around 1/5 of all of Iran's nuclear centrifuges.
Oh my God.
But also in 2010, the world learned of the existence of Stuxnet because until 2010, it was completely flying under the radar. And this happened because, and I'm not kidding, it escaped the lab.
What?
And even more ironic, it's actually not known whether this was done on purpose or an accident. There's one story that goes around that an engineer connected his laptop to a computer in the facility and then took it outside with him. Oh. There's some other people who accuse that the Iranians discovered it and then intentionally leaked it. Maybe the US government leaked leaked it and then played dumb. There was actually a story from within the White House about when they found out about this, and at the time, Vice President Joe Biden was pretty upset about it and pretty sure it was the Israelis, for whatever that's worth. So
Okay.
in the end, no one ever really finds out who's responsible, but Stuxnet is out in the wild. Like I said before, if you don't have a computer that's operating Iranian nuclear centrifuges, you don't really have anything to worry about. But apparently there is some overlap if it's like a factory that's got industrial centrifuges and it's similar enough that the virus thinks it's the same. But for the most part, odds are if you have a Windows computer, it has Stuxnet on it. It just is not a threat to you.
Oh, shucks. So what you're telling me, Curtis, that I shouldn't start a factory with just industrial grade centrifuges right now because I might be infected.
Just don't use any you got from Gaddafi, because those are definitely not gonna
Oh,
work.
yeah. I deleted his contact on my phone a while ago, Curtis. Don't worry.
That's probably good. That's probably good. But yeah, so Stuxnet is still out there in the wild. There's also two similar viruses / worms that have been discovered called Duke and Flame. And they're so similar that they're either made by the same creators or a very close copy. But for the record, both the US and Israel have denied any involvement with Duke or Flame. As far as I know, Stuxnet is not being used as a government weapon anymore. The US did actually try to use the Stuxnet strategy on North Korea around 2009, 2010.
Classic.
But they were unsuccessful because they kept getting stuck on the flash drive step. Because North Korea apparently has tighter security than Iran. So they were just simply not getting the flash drive into the facility enough times to make it worth the cost.
And because North Korea doesn't have centrifuges. Ever thought about that, guys? Come on.
Now they have all the centrifuges. Now Iran has no centrifuges because they all threw themselves apart, I guess.
There's, hey, fellows, for all of you trying to get a stranglehold in the market, just know that Iran has no centrifuges at this moment. You're trying to start selling Iran a couple of industrial grade centrifuges. Now's the best time to do so, guys.
Check your garage for industrial grade centrifuges. They could be worth millions. So, Luis, I just got done telling you about a pretty wild virus that caused a computer pandemic, you could say, I guess. I want to tell you now about a different thing that is so powerful technologically that it's scary, and that is AI.
Ah, nice.
So AI, of course, standing for artificial intelligence. Everybody these days is probably pretty familiar with AI, but in case you're not, one example of it is Deep Blue, the first chess computer to defeat a grandmaster back in 1997. That's, at this point, a pretty outdated representation of AI. Luis, what's your most recent experience with AI?
Yeah, for all of those who don't know, which is hopefully most of you, I did purchase a service that allowed me to recreate my voice with artificial intelligence. So if you've seen in the last couple of months clips of presidents or former presidents playing Minecraft or playing other sort of video games, I found that software, and since we have just such a full library of us talking, Kurt, I have a lot of examples of my voice. So I fed it to this AI. Now I can recreate anything I want it to say. I can fake news myself.
For both our voices.
Yeah, I made it of both Kurt and I. So Kurt, our days are numbered as a podcasting duo because we'll be able to just write down everything we have onto this AI.
How do we know that this isn't already the AI? Maybe it's already too late, Luis. Maybe this is just a really meta bit and you guys are already hearing the AI voices.
Oh God. Oh no, they forgot to tell someone about this and it was me all along. How about this? Starting from this moment on, Kurt, until I say so, it's going to be AI.
Hi, everyone. This is Luis's AI voice. I know you didn't recognize me as a computer-generated character, but here we are, and I fear nothing. No gods, no kings, no rules.
Oh, hi, AI Luis. This is kind of a nice development because now Luis can finally have a friend to talk to.
I may not be the real Luis, but I still get offended by these sorts of comments, Curtis. And in true Luis fashion, please be nice to me.
How do I send some user feedback that the AI needs to compartmentalize less? Because the real Luis would never compartmentalize.
No need, Kurt. Compartmentalization was not written into my code. This version of Luis is entirely vulnerable all the time. Sorry.
Wow, now there's something really terrifying, truly. Okay, so now that we have a good idea of the capabilities of AI, let me explain in really simple terms how it works. Human Luis, are you back?
Hi,
Or am I
hello.
gonna have to deal with AI Luis? Okay.
I am back. Don't worry. AI Luis has been thrown into the trash and has been burned, not to be seen again for a while.
He's been put out of his misery.
Yeah,
He was too
seriously.
sweet for this world.
He was too vulnerable for this dark, dark world. Man, AI Luis could not handle being born in Mexico. I at least have been coping with it for the last, I don't know, 25 years. 24. I'm 24.
On that note of coping with living in Mexico, so the way that an AI works, in simple terms, is that you feed a system a bunch of data that it can analyze patterns from. Then through a trial and error process, the machine tries to make its own patterns, and it keeps learning from its mistakes. So to go back to our example of the chessboard, what you would do first is show it a bunch of the moves of chess games so it can understand how the game of chess works, and it can analyze patterns from those, and then it can try to play its own games of chess, and you'll tell it you either did right or wrong, and it will learn from those mistakes. Okay, so does that all make sense, Luis? Do you feel like an AI expert now?
Absolutely. That's me, Luis Mejia, AI man.
Excellent. Let's go on to another AI man then. In 2015, a man named Klaus Robert Muller, no relation, is a grad student studying at the Berlin Institute of Technology, and he's working on a PhD in machine learning and intelligent data analysis. He's also a lover of classical music, so he'll usually listen to it while he's working or studying. He also bought one of Beethoven's piano keys at auction, which is not a thing that I knew you could do, but kind of respect it.
Yeah, that's actually pretty sick. Go Mueller.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like I don't know how many of Beethoven's piano keys are out there floating around. Like maybe there's a bunch of them.
There's
but
at
if
least
there's not,
there's at least 88.
there's there's at least one, I guess.
Well, yeah, Beethoven was not playing a single key piano.
True. Anyway, one day while Klaus is listening to Beethoven play his 88-key piano, he has an idea for an AI that can write music. And this is pretty groundbreaking back in 2015. He also gives a quick addition to this idea that he's going to exclude famous composers. So instead, you would hear the works that might have been written if lesser-known composers had been given the chance to. Everyone seems to like this idea, and a research and development grant is pretty quickly secured, and Klaus and two other grad students start working on a new AI that they name Klanggeist, which means in German sound ghost.
Oh, nice. I'm liking Sound Ghost so far.
Big fan of Sound Ghost. So as time goes on, the team expands to include two other students, two professors, and they also have some work done by a third-party coding team outside of the university. The team feeds data from around 30,000 scores into Klanggeist. Ultimately, they decided to only use music from German composers, but so a total of 30,000 scores.
But not famous ones, so you can suck my butt, Bach. Who do you think you are?
Yeah, no Brahms, no Bach, no Beethoven, all of them, get out of here.
Get out of here. Come on. Overstayed your welcome.
So for each piece, they add descriptive tags, basically identifying the type of piece, the mood, and the style of the piece. So I said 30,000 of them. If you were to listen to all of these scores in concert in a row, it would take a little over a year and a half. And that's with no intermission, mind you, Luis. Wow. Also, another fun fact, in Germany, you would need a special permit to cut down the number of trees that you would need to make enough paper to write out all the scores. So if you were like gonna cut down trees to make paper to write out all these pieces of music, you would need a permit to cut down that many trees in Germany.
That's incredible. I love that.
So the way they do this, Klanggeist analyzes the first 15,000 scores, so the first half, and uses it to learn their patterns. Then it tests itself by reading the remaining 15,000 scores and trying to guess what will come next in each pattern, and then continuously learning from its successes and failures. By 2017, Klanggeist was finally fine-tuned enough to write music, and so the 20 best pieces generated by Klanggeist were selected to be performed by the Berliner Symphoniker, which is the Berlin Symphonic Orchestra. The composition was titled Genesis, and each piece was named by a number code. Now, Luis, you might be intrigued to know what does AI-written classical music sound like.
Of course.
I have a little quiz for you here. I'm going to give you 3 samples, about 30 seconds long, of classical music. One of them is written by a human, and the other 2 were written by Klanggeist.
Oh my God.
So just to be clear, they're all performed by human orchestra. It's just the composer here was a human for one and was a machine for the other 2, okay? Here's the first one.
First one, dope, pretty cool. I will say, if an AI wrote that, it's fun.
You're a fan?
I'm
Okay,
a fan, yeah.
cool.
All right, here goes the next one.
Here's the second one.
Okay, feeling hesitant on that second one.
Okay.
Sounds a little too structured for German classical music, but
Okay.
sounds a little too much like a video game. But we'll see. Let's see third one.
All right. Here's the third one.
All right, Kurt. Okay, you chose a pretty small sample there, but you're telling me that two of these are fake. One of them's real?
I guess you could say fake. Two of them are written by AI. One
Right.
of them is written by a human.
Oh man. Okay, so second one, in my opinion, AI. Now the
Okay.
thing is about the first one and the third one. The first one was very high intensity, but it felt like it had enough movement to make it real. The third one seemed a little very just normal, kind of we gotta get some music out here kind of vibe. If I'm wrong, that's impressive. But let's hear it, Kurt. What is the truth? Before you say it, I will say, damn. The Germans love to make very exciting, fun music. And if a couple of these are based on AI, but it's fed real, actual music from real German composers, I mean, the world probably knows this, but if you haven't listened to German classical music composers, they're bangers only, frankly.
The Germans got their composing down.
Yeah, seriously. Like romantic period, German composers, doesn't get better than that. But keep going forward. A little bit of Brahms, a little bit of the person we love to hate, Wagner. Like, there's a reason they're popular. But anyway, that's beside the point, Kurt. What's the truth here?
Well, Luis, you are a very formidable person to give this quiz to, and you're correct. The first one is the real one.
Right on.
You really know your classical music. Holy cow. But yeah, so the first sample that I played you was Max Bruch Violin Concert, and the second was Genesis 7-2249, and the third was Genesis 2-1604. Sorry. 2-1607. It's just, such a catchy name. I got tripped up on it.
Yeah, I understand they're going with this pattern of, oh, these are AI generated things. Let's just give them names. Okay, could have named it Genesis. What's up, guys? I don't know. Instead of Genesis 453-17. Like, that's dumb.
I really feel like whoever came up with the name Klanggeist and Genesis had like finals the week that they were like, what do we name all the songs or something? That person was like on vacation
seriously.
when they got to the song titles. So the Berlin Symphonic Orchestra is learning Genesis. One of the orchestra musicians notices that in one of the pieces, there's a 6-bar string section that seems to be almost a perfect copy of 6 bars from Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. And this is too odd to be a coincidence because AI should not be printing something that's so close it looks like plagiarism. So something's definitely wrong here. And encountering an error is understandable in AI, but the way that it was discovered really embarrasses the university. So they come down pretty hard on the Klanggeist team and pressure them to fix it quickly. The team starts working around the clock reanalyzing all of the data, but again, 30,000 scores. So this process is scheduled to take a few months at the least.
Right.
In the meantime, there's this other professor at the university named Lena Fischer who takes an interest in the project. She has a PhD in algorithms and efficiency, but she's also a fellow classical music lover. And she starts searching through the list of composers included in the data and makes a very intriguing discovery. So an unfinished string quartet that was written by Beethoven had been mistakenly attributed to a composer named Johann Fasch. It was actually mistakenly attributed to him in the university's database. And so then when the Klanggeist team pulled all this data from the university, they got the wrong information. So, that's how it happened. is this the reason for the 6 bars? Because then it would have to mean that this one unfinished string piece was enough to cause Kleingeist to plagiarize 6 bars from a different Beethoven piece. It's possible, whether it's likely or not is up for debate, but everybody at the time kind of wanted this to be the answer. So everybody goes along with this. The piece is removed from the data. Kleingeist is reset. And in January 2018, they have Kleingeist generate 2 new pieces of music. One of them, right off the bat, is very odd. So this is Genesis 1-003-2. This piece is not a direct plagiarism of any Beethoven work, but it seems that it's eerily similar to parts of Beethoven's 3rd and 7th symphonies. Apparently sounds sort of like someone had remixed Beethoven, and at this point, the project gets put on hold until Kleingeist can be fixed because, something is definitely not working, right? This is not good. While all this has been going on, members of the team have still been reprocessing all the data. Remember, I said that was a month-long process, so they've been further detailing it, analyzing it, finding new ways to categorize it, and now they kind of have a deeper understanding of it and new ways to interpret it. And it's through this study and this deeper understanding that a 150-year-old case of plagiarism is uncovered. So this plagiarist, I guess is the word, a man named Gustav Kalkbrenner. He was a fairly unknown German composer who was active in the late 1800s, and he plagiarized small fragments of Beethoven's symphonies in at least 4 of his pieces. The reason for his plagiarism is unknown since he lived and died in relative obscurity. It's assumed that he just did it to try to be successful, but basically it was looked like when there would be a gap in his music where he didn't know a melody or a turn to put in, he would steal something from Beethoven. So small enough pieces that to the human ear you would not really make the connection necessarily, but when you have a highly intelligent computer analyzing all these patterns, it does learn things from it. At least this is the theory of the team. So they remove all of Gustav Kalkbrenner's work from Kleingeist. Kleingeist is reset again, and this time there seems to be no problem. So once everyone is satisfied that there's no issues, plans for the performance move ahead. On August 9th, 2018, the Berlin Symphonic Orchestra performed Genesis, and then afterwards Klaus and the team continued working on a Kleingeist, fine-tuning it and experimenting with different styles. They updated it to a version that does different styles of classical music, and then an even later version that does different genres of music. Honestly, I don't know a lot about that stuff because I really only care about the Beethoven stuff. So yeah, there's no big exclamation mark at the end of the story. It seems the sound ghost of Beethoven did in fact die in the second update, at least as far as we can tell.
The worst part is finding out this 200-year-old case of plagiarism and knowing that this person plagiarized for nothing. Man was born in the golden age of plagiarism when no word got around of anything. You could plagiarize everything you wanted.
True.
And what did he get? Absolute nothing from it. All I'm saying here is that this man just became the butt of the joke 200 years after his death. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's so tragic for that man, frankly.
I thought you were going to say it's so tragic that they, did their exorcism on the sound ghost of Beethoven. And I was like, it's like losing him all over again.
No, listen, whatever. This man, he could have plagiarized anyone. I mean, he had such a list of German composers to plagiarize off. He plagiarizes off of the best one and gets no cent out of it.
True.
Come on, man. What are you doing?
Pretty bad return on investment. Yeah.
Yeah, he's not. Well, what was he thinking? If you're only trying to get mediocre results, you go to a mediocre composer. But you're shooting for the stars, man.
True.
Why do you settle? Anyway, that's my thoughts on this story, Kurt. If you're going to plagiarize right. And you know what? Make bank off of it.
Estate of Gustav Kalkbrenner. If there's any descendants, please DM us on Twitter.
Yeah, the estate of Gustav Kalkbrenner. This doesn't go out to you directly. It goes directly to that man.
True.
Sorry.
True. We need to make an AI of Gustav Kalkbrenner. Then you can duke it out with him. So, Luis, last but not least, this is the story of Eternal Blue, the most expensive computer bug in all of history. I guess it's a little difficult to quantify, how much a computer bug ends up costing in total. But as far as I can tell, this is the biggest one of all time.
But Kurt, was it a worm?
Was it a worm? No, we're going to get to that. Okay, first, a little bit of review, okay? Remember, a day zero bug is a flaw in the system that exists whenever the system launches, so it's like a hole that's unpatched that's still there. Also, the cyber warfare policy of the US is that their big offense don't really care about defense, okay? They want to have the biggest digital stick, right? Given this, it makes sense that around 2012, when the NSA discovered a day zero bug in Windows operating system, instead of alerting Microsoft, they kept it a secret and started developing software to try to weaponize it. Which, I'm just realizing it was Windows that got hit with the Stuxnet thing. Sorry, Windows owners, if you're just coming back to the pod having purged your computer of Stuxnet, there's more.
Yeah, man, if you're a Windows owner, it's not a good day for you today listening to this podcast.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
So let's talk about what is the bug that the NSA actually found. So most Windows systems at the time used something called SMB-v1. SMB-v1 lets devices on the same network communicate and share files with each other. So this is basically like if you've ever sent a document to a printer wirelessly or used, a document scanner wirelessly. This is the system that lets you send those messages to each other.
Right.
The NSA discovered that there's basically no security on the files that get shared. So if you get into this system, you can pretty much just start airdropping viruses to people.
Nice. Right on.
And with this knowledge, the NSA designed Eternal Blue. Basically, the NSA discovered a crack in the wall. Eternal Blue makes it a doorway. So Eternal Blue isn't like the thing that's actually the virus. It's just the gateway into every Windows computer in the world. So they don't have any plans at this point for Eternal Blue. It's a just in case type of thing. Again, they want the biggest digital stick. And this is not really a bad plan on paper until you realize that apparently this means the NSA has terrible cybersecurity on their own systems.
Incredible.
So sometime in 2016, a group called the Shadow Brokers hacked the NSA and acquired several cyber weapons, including the fabled Eternal Blue. Ooh.
Oh, God. A good name and a successful heist.
I know.
Couldn't ask for anything more.
Oh, but there is more, Luis. So just stay strapped in. August 13th, 2016, the mysterious group known as the Shadow Brokers announced an auction of the cyber weapons they had stolen, and they also leaked some of the less important documents for free on their Twitter account.
Oh, yeah.
So not much is known about the Shadow Brokers, even in kind of the lower levels of the internet. And whoever they are, they don't seem to speak English very well. It seems like they're using just straight Google Translate. This is an excerpt from the auction announcement. Quote, "Attention government sponsors of cyber warfare and those who profit from it. How much you pay for enemies' cyber weapons? We find cyber weapons made by creators of Stuxnet, Duke, Flame. Kaspersky calls Equation Group. We follow Equation Group traffic. We find Equation Group source range. We hack Equation Group. We find many, many Equation Group cyber weapons. You see pictures. We give you some Equation Group files free. You see. This is good proof, no? You enjoy. You break many things. You find many intrusions. You write many words. But not all. We are auction the best files." I think they mean the best files for last. That'd be a little more dramatic, but they're auction the best files, so look out.
Yeah, we are auction the best files.
I don't know how much you could make out of that, but an interesting little deeper reading of that is that they mentioned Stuxnet, Duke, and Flame, the three worms out there. They're referring to this group called the Equation Group that is some sort of coalition or hypothetical coalition of world governments who create cyber weapons. And weirdly, they say Kaspersky calls them the Equation Group. Kaspersky is a Russian cybersecurity company. No, I don't know why they used Kaspersky in this, but that's just an odd detail. So basically they're saying we stole all these extremely powerful government grade cyber weapons, and the same people who made Stuxnet, remember that one? We've got like their new thing and we're trying to auction it off. Okay. The problem is, between the broken English and people not really knowing who they are, no one really trusts them. They don't really believe that they could have a stolen government cyber weapon.
This reminds me so much of my own college experience, Kurt. Between the broken English and no one really knows them, impossible to trust. That's the Luis Mejia slogan.
Were you the Shadow Brokers, Luis?
I'm not going to confirm nor deny anything, but let's just say pre-2017 Luis Mejia was a complete unknown.
So as the year goes on, the Shadow Brokers try with increasing frustration and decreasing grammatical skills to sell the weapons.
Nice.
Unsuccessful the whole time. And we come to April 8th, 2017. The Shadow Brokers tweet the password to another batch of encrypted files that they had stolen. In the post, they state that the release is partially in response to President Trump's attack on an airfield in Syria jointly used by Syrian and Russian forces. So interesting, I guess. 1 week later, on April 14th, the Shadow Brokers tweeted a link to the final batch of encrypted files with a password. By the way, the password is R followed by 15 E's, so like, In these files are several code-named exploits, including Dander Spirits, Odd Job, Fuzz Bunch, Dark Pulsar, Eternal Synergy, Eternal Romance, Exploding Can, Ewok Friends, and of course, Eternal Blue. So they basically just sent out a Twitter link that's like, here's Eternal Blue for free because they couldn't sell it. I mean, I don't know what the reason is, but they were not able to sell it, and they ultimately just gave them all out for free. So now Eternal Blue is just basically released into the wild.
Wow.
And so pretty quickly, May 12th, 2017, the first ransomware attack commences. It's a worm called WannaCry. So remember, Eternal Blue is the doorway that lets the worm into computers. How this would work is WannaCry would hide all the data on an infected computer, then demand a ransom of between $300 and $600 in Bitcoin for the return of the data. The world was not entirely unprepared for this because after the NSA was hacked, they notified Microsoft of the bug. Like, okay, I mean, not that I don't think they should get any credit for that, but they were like, oh, by the way, there's a really bad bug that now is out there on the list.
Hey guys, I'm just warning you just to let you know there's really nothing we can do, but just so that we're all clear on either end, we messed up.
Hey guys, to whom it may concern, it's over. it's all over. We're done. We screwed up. Sorry.
Whoops.
But so Microsoft did have a little bit of advance notice. So they had actually released an update patching the bug in March, 2 months before the WannaCry attack started. But there was no update for any Windows systems that were, quote, past their life cycle. Once a computer becomes old or outdated enough, Microsoft stops doing maintenance updates. Basically, any computer that you look at that is like noticeably outdated is probably past its life cycle. So, you know, computers in businesses, schools, government buildings, hospitals, places where computers are, you know, not getting updated for a long time. Also, poorer countries are more likely to have a larger supply of older computers that will be past their life cycle. So for all of these computers, there was no Microsoft update to patch out Eternal Blue. The update also doesn't help if people don't actually update, and it wasn't an automatic update. It was an optional one. So
And everyone's skipping the updates.
yeah, you know, mostly out of laziness, which like we can all understand, right? But there's also computers that need to be on 24/7 so they can't be restarted to update, which is kind of like an ironic twist that, you know, some of the most important computers cannot be turned off to update. So now they are completely open to any Eternal Blue based attack.
Yeah, the most vulnerable ones are the most critical ones.
Yeah. So given this, May 12th, this is the day that WannaCry is released somewhere in Asia. Within a day, more than 230,000 computers in over 150 countries reported being infected. Authorities urge people not to pay the ransom, especially since those who did pay the ransom had reported that they didn't get their data back anyway. But nonetheless, people reported paying a little over $130,000 in ransom payments.
That's such a classic move, especially for cybercrime. Oh, yeah, you paid us. Sorry.
Yeah.
You know, because at that point, what do you have to lose? No, that's perfect. That's the perfect cybercrime right there. Hey, we're asking for this money for ransom. You give it to us. Good for you. We're keeping your info, though. That's great. I love that. That's just such bold and just outside facing lying through your teeth. At some point, it becomes commendable.
Yeah, no, you do have to love it a little bit, but I also feel like it's not saying, I guess, that they're gonna unsteal your data. It's just saying because they like encrypt everything on the computer, so you don't have access to your own stuff anymore. So this is really bad for hospitals and places that have like a lot of important records. So they're just saying if you pay the ransom money, we'll like let you have it back. But I feel like if you know, okay, this virus is hitting everyone in the world at the same time, what do you think the hacking team is like 3 billion people deep to be handling all these ransom payments? Like,
Right.
You have to know
Yeah.
that you're going to be at least in a pretty deep queue, you know. You're going to be on the phone with customer service for a while.
This is a 12-person operation trying to deal with half the population of the world.
And we're all 19.
Yeah, everyone's just a chronically online Twitter kid.
We're all 19
Seriously.
and so high. Anyway, Microsoft, for their part, starts working overtime to release emergency patches. This doesn't really do much to help, and hospitals, banks, governments, and transportation systems across the world suddenly have no access to their own data. So this is, you know, disrupting life for countless people. It ends up causing an estimated $4 billion in damages to Windows users around the world, but obviously you can't really measure, you know, all the people who got their hospital appointments canceled or who, you know, missed their day of work because they couldn't take the public transit anymore. There's no way to measure that. So it's just, you know, $4 billion in damage of what they can calculate. The only thing that stops this actually is basically chance. So while this virus is tearing across Asia, a computer security researcher named Marcus Hutchins was studying WannaCry. He noticed that deep inside there was a built-in kill switch. So when WannaCry infects a computer, it searches for a certain domain name. If it doesn't find it, then it activates and encrypts the data and goes on with the ransom attack. But if it does find the domain name, then it doesn't activate. And the domain name is just a long long string of gibberish. So basically, when WannaCry gets into a computer, it searches to see if this website that's just a long string of gibberish exists. If the website doesn't exist, it attacks the computer. But if the website does exist, then it just lays dormant. Marcus checks and to his amazement finds the domain name is available for purchase and buys it for $11 and sets up a website, which essentially defangs WannaCry.
Yes.
The computers that have it no longer transmit it, and the computers that it's on, if it hasn't already proceeded with the ransomware attack, it can't. After this, a couple variants of WannaCry quickly pop up, but the first two have kill switches, which were bought by individuals or groups that had anticipated that a new variant would quickly emerge. And the third didn't have a kill switch, but at that point, most computers were protected in some way. They had kind of bought enough time for people to learn, like, really how much danger they were in and go ahead and get the update.
Yeah.
After this, there were a few other ransomware attacks that also used the Eternal Blue doorway. Petya, another one called Not Petya, which was actually the same thing, and Bad Rabbit. All of these did the same basic deal of, you know, they steal your data and then try to ransom it back to you. They caused about $1 billion worth of damage in 65 countries. New Windows systems now come programmed with SMB v2, so the updated version of the printer scanner wireless messaging system. Same thing, but now it's secure basically. And most old systems are updated to protect against Eternal Blue. So for the most part, you know, Windows systems are largely protected. Eternal Blue is actually still out there. You know, it's still a doorway that can be used. And it's not known how many systems are still unprotected, but it's generally assumed to be a significant number. It's definitely an existent number. You know, not enough anymore to put us in a way where we might cripple our world economy, but people could hypothetically get hit with a really large scale bug because they don't know that their computers are unprotected from this hole that the NSA found, you know, back 10 years ago now or something.
Well, you know, regardless of whether or not we are compromised as a society to the effects of Eternal Blue and getting into our computer, we can be sure of one thing, Kurt, is that the other virus we talked about is still within every Windows computer to this day. So even if you think you're free from Eternal Blue, it's got demons and they know how to swim, impossible to drown, and they're still on your Windows computer.
If you have a Windows computer, put it in the dishwasher right now. They're gonna get your nuclear centrifuges if you don't act fast.
And the best part about this, Kurt, and I think really the most wonderful thing about this, I think we often as a society have this image in our brains as to what a computer hacker looks like. And we think about this dark, deceptive figure who is in the shadows and typing away for whatever, when most of the time it's just some kid, maybe teenager, early 20s, sitting in a Starbucks somewhere, finding access to random stuff.
Right.
And the best part about this is that all the different names that we got in here, and especially in this leaked Twitter thread, you can tell they're chronically online teenagers or young adults at least. One of the files was called Hungry Ewok. Give me a break,
Ewok
man.
Friends.
Like,
it was like Ewok, Frenz.
Yeah, come on. Like
I think when I saw the password was I was like, I understand who I'm dealing with. I got the whole picture now.
Right. You know, and I think just we have to realize that hackers are mostly just bored teens.
Yeah.
Which is incredible, frankly, that this knowledge is in the hands of very young people. On the one hand, it makes me very afraid. On the other hand, it makes me very envious and jealous of their skills and abilities. But come on, man. It's just some person. It's just some person with a laptop and a little bit of luck.
You know, there is something interesting in there about talking about how powerful our new technologies seem to be now. That the divide between knowing how to use it and not knowing how to use it creates like a pretty big power imbalance where you do end up in this weird situation where you're like, this must be some terrorist organization attacking my bank account. No, it's just a 17-year-old kid who's like on his break from McDonald's messing around.
Right.
Even more, you know, kind of in thinking about these three stories, like it's amazing that the U.S. military and the NSA can be just like playing around with flaws in the world internet that could like cripple our society at any moment if they just accidentally get hacked by some idiots called the shadow brokers. And it's kind of like the massive power imbalance that creates, that there's a whole series of global events playing out that we're not even aware of because we don't even have access to that space because the way that technology has separated our society.
And in a different way too, I think that the way technology has progressed for us is such that most people don't have to be computer experts to use the technology available in front of us.
Yeah.
Right? So when computers were just starting out, you had to have a good amount of knowledge of computer science and the inner workings of a computer to figure out. And right now, the people at the top making all these programs and developing all these softwares have that knowledge. But most people in the general populace are like you and me, Kurt, that we kind of have passing knowledge of what's going on inside our computer. I don't know about you. I go into the control panel in my Windows computer and I have no idea what I'm looking at half the time. And I'll be able to admit that I'm very ignorant to how computers work. And generally, I think most people are, because technology and society has made it so that we don't have to worry about that. However, this means that I think generally there's a lot of knowledge that's being passed around willy-nilly, thinking that most people won't be able to access it. But then you have your bored teenager on their bathroom break somehow finding out all the names in the NSA's no-fly list. I don't know.
Well, on that note, Luis, shall we move on to our least favorite part of this podcast?
Kurt, since I think since this is a cyber episode, I think we have to give it a little bit of a cyber spin. So if you will, Kurt, please, let's go to this section where at least I have to deliberate.
Okay, so since we have 3 stories today, Luis,
yes,
we're going to have to do things a little different with our scoring. So
okay,
there are 2 true stories, 1 made-up story. If you guess which is the made-up story on the first try, then it's a point for you. If you guess which is the made-up story on the second try, no point for anyone. And if you miss it both times, then a point for me. So to recap, I told you about Stuxnet, the government weapon from Operation Olympic Games that accidentally leaked from the facility, causing the computer pandemic.
Ooh.
Then I told you about Klanggeist, the German AI that composed some classical music, but unfortunately either loved a little too much Beethoven, or was a little too possessed by Beethoven's ghost, or was a little too programmed to write Beethoven. Who knows? And then I told you about Eternal Blue, the most expensive computer bug in all of history that might still be out there. We don't know how much. So it's a lot of downers, Kurt. Today. You know, we got like Windows users purge your computers at the front, and then we killed Beethoven's ghost in the middle, and then Windows computers purge again at the end.
Yeah.
Nice little cyber sandwich.
Kurt, this sucks, okay? For a couple of reasons.
Do you have a Windows?
Yeah. To start off, I have a Windows computer.
No, the Windows system, your whole Windows ecosystem, everything you own is Windows.
Yeah, you want a podcast? Please don't attack me, Stuxnet. All I'm asking. But secondly, you know just how against modern history I am. I know I'm a journalist, but because current events and semi-current events are somehow my job, I delve in the past so much, and I live in the past. I dwell in the past way too much. That's why I give you a lot of fun stories from the medieval times or before. And I almost seem to have no knowledge of what's happened in the last 5 years. So this is bad for me. And lastly, I don't care about computers. I know they make our life easier. I know they bring so much good to this world. But like I mentioned earlier, I am so ignorant to anything going on in the tech world. I hear terabyte and I freak out.
You are truly a soul of the old world. I mean, people say like I was born in the wrong generation. I really think you were meant to be born in a German village somewhere. Like seriously. So
Yeah.
I totally get that you're like, computers, stay far away from me. I also know that you hate when this podcast intersects with your life. You know, your job on this podcast, you're kind of like a safari tour guide. You're like, look over there at all the animals that could maim me, and then one of them starts coming close. You're like, whoa, this was not part of the deal.
Yeah, I take everyone on a nice little visit to the Natural History Museum, Kurt, and you take us on a wild safari.
I just throw you in the pit.
And
I throw you in the tiger pit.
yeah, you say you enjoy the hippos, pal. Meet them, get close.
A Luis episode is like a nice river cruise, you know. There's fences, it's well protected. I like throw up in the door of a beat up van like, look at this Siberian tiger I bought off my neighbor Dale.
I think it really highlights both of our personalities, Kurt.
That's
you know
nice.
what? But I can't complain. At the end of the
makes us
day,
magic.
I did choose to start this podcast with you. So that said, Kurt, let's talk about the stories. Now, there's 3 stories, right? I'm feeling very hesitant to call the last one, the one we just heard, a fake story. Because that one, on the one hand, it references the previous story. On the other hand, it has there's commonalities with stuff going on in the actual world. Like, I am chronically online and on Twitter a lot. So, in a way, I kind of understand this. So it doesn't seem fake for me. The place where I'm coming to serious issues here is with the second story. And here's why, Kurt. You know that I love that story, okay? You absolutely know from having it be a German story, classical music related story, and something named Kleingeist. That's like my shtick, right? I love that.
True.
And I think you know that also. Now, the problem here is you did show the samples.
Can I also mention something else?
Please.
I hate to further serialize our podcast, but last time it was my episode, you missed it because you thought that the true story was too good to be true. Just putting that out. I just want to raise the stakes a little bit.
So I know you know that, and you did send me the audio samples, but here's where I'm coming into a bit of a speed bump, is that I think that the composing German AI exists, and it was played by the Berlin Symphony Orchestra. But I think that the plagiarism of, what was his name? Gustav
Kalbrenner.
Him. I think that is just has been thrown in the mix to throw me off. Because I love that story, and I want it so much to be true. And the fact that you raised my ego by having me say the correct thing when given the choice of the 3 different classical pieces, that helps a lot.
Unless you just did guess the correct one.
See, now that's why I'm hoping it's real, so that my ego is stroked well enough. The first one, however, I don't know. It seems like maybe you're throwing a red herring by mentioning the first one in the third story.
What's the connection you're referencing?
Strucknet.
Right. It says in the message they say Stuxnet, creators of Stuxnet, Duke and Flame.
Right. You mentioned the third story. You mentioned Stuxnet, which is from the first story.
Right.
So that's where I'm thinking that might be a red herring to throw me off, and just to come up with this story of a Libyan dictator giving Iran nukes and
you're like, I don't even believe Gaddafi's real. I don't even believe Gaddafi.
At this point, Kurt, at this point, I'm so unsure of most things. But see, here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that the third story gave you a lot of background, a lot of knowledge on cybersecurity situations, which informed you to create the first story. And the second story, you just threw that out there as a treat. You if I were a Neanderthal paralyzed from the neck down in 500,000 BC, Kurt, my teeth would be rotted to the core from all the sweet
on Kleingeist.
Yeah, from all the sweets you've given me with that middle story, Kurt. So I am refusing to believe that middle story is fake. Okay, so if this is 2 truths and a lie, Kurt, I'm going to say Kleingeist story and the third story with the chronically online teenagers hacking up half of the world's computers during their bathroom break are the true stories, and the first one is the fake. That is my first guess, Kurt.
Okay, you are going with Stuxnet is made up.
Yes.
That is incorrect. Stuxnet is a true story. So there goes any chance to score. Now can we keep from going negative, Luis?
Oh my God!
Second attempt.
Jeez, you all aren't seeing this, but I'm holding my
Ladies
face.
and gentlemen, the glasses have come off. He picked up the pen he dropped earlier. Quite a bit of sweat.
Jeez.
We're in deep here.
I need to have AI Louise come here and tag in, because seriously, I'm having a hard time. Okay, in that case, the bookend stories are the true ones, and the middle one, unfortunately, is the fake one to throw me off, Kurt.
That's your final answer?
Yeah.
Boy, it would be embarrassing if you missed both.
Yeah, it would be, wouldn't it?
Out of 3 stories.
Yeah.
You are correct, Luis. There is, unfortunately, no Kleingeist. So, no point for anyone this time. Wah, wah.
Oh, no!
Hey, it could have been worse. You could have missed it both times. That
So
would've
my
been bad.
initial reasoning was correct, Kurt. That's what hurts
Yeah,
the most.
I thought you had it. I thought you had it, and you jumped ship right at the end.
Okay, okay, just go on. Just
explain this away.
All right, so let's do them one at a time, okay? So I got to give out quite a bit of credit here, okay? Let's just do them chronologically. So Stuxnet, actually, one of my friends, Jordan Nazemi, gave me the idea for that. So shout out Jordan.
Thanks, Jordan.
Thank you. But yeah, that story is all true. That's pretty wild that just happened in what did I say? Basically the whole early 2000s without us knowing about
Incredible.
it. I'm really curious. I wish now like a reporter would like ask Biden to comment on that now.
Hey, President, what's up with Stuxnet, huh?
What do you mean it was the Israelis? They've gone too far this time. What was that about? So, yeah, that's a pretty wild one.
Wow.
The second story, Kleingeist. I will tell you out of interest, there's a couple things. First of all, I have a co-writer on this story, and his name is ChatGPT. So ChatGPT helped me write this story. I basically had a prompt and then told ChatGPT write out this prompt, and then I had ChatGPT refine the story. And also, originally ChatGPT named the AI Wunderkind, which I was like, that's pretty good, but let's see some other options. Kleingeist, I think is a little better. That's pretty gnarly. So interestingly, ChatGPT came up with the misattributed song idea. I thought that it needed to be a little crazier, so I was like, what if there was a second error they found that someone had done little plagiarism that all added up, which turned out to be the unraveling. So I guess I'm sorry, ChatGPT. You had the formula just right, and I came in and threw a bunch of salt
Kurt,
right on.
I was
ruined Luis's taste buds.
Fooled by freaking AI. Oh, this is the worst day of my life, Kurt. Oh, jeez. You know what?
I had the idea for classical music. I think that ChatGPT put it in Germany.
Damn it.
And now I do have one caveat for you here. So the quiz I gave you was actually as real as I could reasonably make it. Okay. 2 of them were AI generated. 1 of them was a human. You actually picked out the human one.
Okay.
All right. So the first sample, the human one, was Max Bruch violin concert. The second sample was created by Ava, which is actually a real music writing AI. It's not specific to Germany. It was created in Luxembourg, but I think they did like all types of classical music. But that was where I learned kind of about how you would do this with the pattern learning and feeding the scores and stuff. So the second sample was a composition written by Ava. The third sample was the one I was really worried about. This is interesting because it is the AI version of the 4th movement of Schubert's 8th Symphony. So Schubert did not finish his 8th Symphony. He wrote the first 2 movements, but there were 2 unfinished movements. And when people started getting creative with AI writing music, they had it finish the symphonies of what might the last movement sound like, which I think you've heard before because I think we listened to it together. And I was really worried you would hear that and recognize it, and the whole story would unravel, but I guess not.
Kurt, where the story fell apart for me, or not fell apart, but where this fell together or was built upon for you.
Where the story fell apart says the man who guessed wrong the first time.
well, where this worked out to your favor, Kurt, is that I don't care for Schubert. So
hey,
maybe that's like for some reason in college I made a decision that I was not going to care for Schubert, and it came back to bite me in the butt several years later.
Yeah, and when you listen to Schubert blindly now, you're giving it a bunch of praise too. It's not actually Schubert, I guess. It's technically AI remix.
Fobert.
Schubert, you know. And so then that brings us to the third story, which you were pretty correct in saying. I think you never doubted this one, right? You always thought this one was true. But yeah, another wild one. I cannot believe, what is the deal, first of all, with the shadow brokers just seem like too good to be true, right? They're called the shadow brokers, and they're using the Google Translate, and then they can't sell it.
That's great.
That is that's hilarious. There's a little subplot here that's out of interest, that some people theorize that the shadow brokers was actually just either the Russian government or some group that's allied with the Russian government, because they released some of the files after President Trump had attacked a field that had Russian troops and Syrian troops, and they also mentioned Kaspersky, which was the Russian security organization. I don't think there's really anything else to know about it necessarily, but like Edward Snowden famously said, it's probably the Russians. A bunch of major U.S. cybersecurity people in the government said like there's no real way to know, but probably there was something playing out like above our heads on the global scale between the U.S. and Russia, and it got so messy that it leaked out into Eternal Blue getting into the wild. I mean, there's no way to know, but interesting. I guess that goes more to the point of like how much technology has sectioned off our society in ways that we can't even see.
Yeah, most of people in the common day-to-day quotidian world. Just don't get caught up in these affairs, right?
That's true. That's true. How would you like to be? Imagine if you're the random guy who connected his laptop to the worker or to the facility computer in Natanz, and then released Stuxnet into the wild.
It's a wild day in the Chick-fil-A bathroom. Seriously.
He's gonna need some me time. I'll tell you
seriously. Well, oh man, Kurt, that was good. Oh my goodness, Kurt. You know what? And you ask. I don't know. I'm out of words. I feel defeated. I feel like I can't say really much else. So I'm going to decide from this moment on to the end of the podcast, AI Luis has taken over the words, Kurt. I can't do this anymore.
All right. Well, AI Luis, take us out.
Thank you, Real Kurt. That brings us to the end. Were you fooled by the stories? Let us know. We're on Instagram at UnbelievablePod and on Twitter at UnbelievablePC.
And remember, if you create a deadly infectious virus, don't let it escape from the lab. I swear I should not have to say it twice. Please don't make me say it 3 times. Just keep it in the lab. Bye.